Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin. Welcome back to the channel. Yes, I'm actually recording another video. I know last week I couldn't get around to it. My work schedule was kind of weird. I'll probably be able to get one out next week as well. But it's going to be really dependent upon work schedule, so I may be recording these and releasing, maybe changing what days I record. But I'll keep you all posted on that one. As always, likes, comments, subscriptions, greatly appreciated. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the Senate elections next year because, yeah, that might be interesting. And so I've started with basically all the safe states filled in. I can't get my normal electoral map site to work, so if anybody knows how to make that happen, I'd greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to go through all the states that I would sort as to likely, and honestly, I'm going to start with Florida. I'm trying to remember, I believe it is Rick Scott in Florida. I was trying to remember which Scott it was, because Tim Scott, South Carolina, Vermont Governor Phil Scott, and then it's Rick Scott in Florida. Anyway, so yeah. Well, I'm almost tempted to put that as safe, but we'll see. It's going to be a presidential cycle, so, it's not going to be as, lopsided as the governor's race was in last year. Another one that I'm going to put in the likely Republican category for right now, even though it is Ted Cruz, is Texas. I just don't see the Democrats really putting up a strong general election candidate. As well, I'm going to be very interested to see how the Rio Grande Valley goes, because if it goes for the Republicans, I really don't see this, even with Democrats expanding their margins and expanding their wins into further and further into suburbs and exurbs. There's just too many people in the Rio Grande, and the Republicans have a lot of room to grow down there if they really want to. Yeah, because to me it just seems like the best option for growth for Republicans there. Moving on, another one, I'm pretty confident Republicans are going to flip West Virginia. It's going to be a presidential election year. As popular as Joe Manchin is in West Virginia, I just don't see him holding on in a presidential election year. So he may try. He's already said he's going to run for re-election, but he's also said he's open to running a third-party presidential campaign. And that might significantly affect the general election if he's able to gain even the slightest amount of traction. I'd like to see how that would go, but it would be very interesting. Now on the Democrat side, this is going to be highly dependent on whether Senator Menendez resigns, stays in office, and continues to run for re-election, or is primaried. If he stays and wins the primary, this election is going to get a lot more competitive. On the other hand, if he's primaried or decides to resign, it's going to move into safe Democratic territory. So that's why I'm putting it right there, because there is that chance that Menendez still wins the primary, in which case it's going to get a lot more competitive. What is it with corruption, right? Anyway. Another one, this is kind of where, I don't know why Vermont is listed like that. It should be pretty safe for Sanders, but depends on how strong the Democrat running is. It could take away some of his vote and allow a Republican to become competitive there. Kyrsten Sinema is running as an independent in Arizona, and she's got a decent following, but the Democrats have already said they're going to run a challenge to boot her. And that could pave the way for Republicans. That said, I'm going to leave it as Sinema winning re-election for right now, until I see, definitive polling as well as anything else. Virginia, it depends on who runs on the Republican side. I think Youngkin would stand a decent chance at flipping the Commonwealth in the Senate. After all, this is Tim Kaine, not Mark Warner we're talking about here. I could see Winsome Sears pulling it off as well. And I think that would... But, it's Republicans are kind of unlucky that this is the year Virginia is up rather than, say, last time around, because a good middle-of-the-ground Republican like Sears or Youngkin could absolutely win that race in a favorable environment for the Republican Party. Now we move on to the rest of the competitive slate. Now, I think putting Minnesota as safe is a little bit unfair, but I'm going to leave it. It was already listed as safe, so there's good reason to believe that. And this is why this map would be so good for Republicans if it happened last year rather than next year. Because we've got 5 states Donald Trump won at least once that are currently held by Democrats. 1 seat where you could make an argument that the state is getting much more competitive and is held by an independent. One who Democrats probably aren't going to challenge. Though that one has ranked choice voting, so that could get a little bit funky. That said, I fully expect if Angus King doesn't win right off the bat in the first round, I have a very sneaking suspicion that he'd win before it ever got to the point where it's him or a Republican or him and a Democrat. Just because I don't think Republicans are going to put a Democrat as their second choice, and I don't think Democrats are going to put a Republican as their second choice. And that Angus King is going to benefit from that. So the Republican or Democrat would have to win before it gets to the point where it's them or King. Nevada is a very competitive state, and Republicans actually flipped the governorship last year. They darn near flipped the Senate seat. So I'm very interested to see if they can actually pull it off in a presidential election year, especially one where if you look at polling, it's showing a competitive race. A lot of... Now, yes, some of these are showing, Biden up by a decent margin, but then you've got some that are showing, well, let's limit it to Biden. Here's Trump up by 5. Here's one, Trump up by 4. Trump up by 4. Now, yeah, you could say quality of the pollster. Depends. Here's another one. Trump up by 1. ABC, Washington Post. Now, this is a bit of an outlier, but Trump up by 10, Trump up by 9, and over 50%. This is well within the margin of error. Here's another one. Again, within the margin of error, but Trump up, and NBC is the sponsor of the poll, and they've got good pollsters that they hire out. Trump up by 3, but, still under 40%. Here's a good one. Trump up by 5. So what I'm seeing is basically it's a competitive election, and that is going to lend itself to Donald Trump being much more competitive than he was, say, in 2020, where Biden won nationally by, I want to say, 5%. Let me see. Here we go. National popular vote. What was the margin? It was about... It was a little bit over 5. Because we've got, 4.5%. And Biden only just won. Biden only just won in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And we're talking like tens of thousands of votes in each state, which in the grand scheme of things was less than 1% in each state. Now, yes, Georgia isn't a very elastic state, and I think it's moved slightly more to the Democrats ever since, but if we're talking about an election that's only a 1 or a 2% margin of victory for Biden, that probably means Trump is winning Georgia and Wisconsin and Arizona, probably Nevada, and that would be more than enough to win the election outright, which I think paves the way for Republicans down ballot who generally have been seen to overperform Donald Trump through whenever they're on the same ticket. I think what that basically means is that, let's assume Trump wins, is on the ballot, most voters are going to direct their disgust at Trump towards Trump rather than Republicans down ticket, and I think that's what we're seeing, what we've seen. It's an interesting theory that's been around since 2018, but we'll see if it holds true continuing down the road. But for right now, I'm pretty happy leaving these states in the toss-up category. Though, we could make an argument that Pennsylvania is probably going to lean Democrat, as will Michigan, because I believe it's Debbie Stabenow who's pretty popular. Though I could see John James, if he runs again, upsetting her, because that was the fact it was almost an upset in 2018 in a very favorable year for Democrats shows that there's potential there. I think Ron Portman is going to lose in Ohio simply because it's the wrong year. Though if there's one Democrat who would be able to win a state where the opposite party, where the Republicans win in the presidential election, it's going to be Ohio. Just because Rob Portman has a good, strong brand in Ohio. Wisconsin, this could go really either way, I feel. If the Republican wins it in the presidential election, I expect that the Republican wins down ticket, especially if it's Trump. Montana, I think Tester just doesn't have it in him to win in a presidential election year. He kind of got lucky in 2012, but I don't think he'll get lucky. And he got lucky with the cycle he was in, and he still almost lost. A similar situation happened in Nevada. I could really see this being the map, but I'm gonna be biased towards the incumbent in this case. So this is roughly where I expect the map to be, which would be a net flip of 2 for the Republicans, but it could get a lot worse. If it turns out that, let's say, Nikki Haley wins the nomination and Trump decides to endorse her, or just say, I'm not running an independent campaign, this could get really ugly for the Democrats really quickly. Because Nikki Haley, I believe, has the ability to win by 3 points nationally, maybe a fourth, but let's just leave it in the 3-point range, but more likely 1 or 2. That would be more than enough for Republicans to win nationally, and that would carry with it probably Nevada, probably Wisconsin, possibly Pennsylvania. Arizona's on the table. Maine would potentially be on the table, but we'll leave it in Angus King's camp. This could get very ugly for Democrats. Like, That's a margin we haven't seen in a long time. You know, and let's not forget, let's look at the worst case for Democrats, because it is possible. I could see New Mexico being competitive, but I won't touch it here. Let's say Menendez wins a primary and Republicans are winning nationally. I could see New Jersey flipping. It wouldn't be dead set, but we could be talking about, especially if they were to pick Maine up. Yeah, now this is definitely way on the outside, and just for reference, let's talk about worst case for Republicans. They don't pick off Ohio. They don't pick off Nevada. Worst case for them would probably be the Democrat actually winning Arizona. Sinema winning in Arizona is not a worst case scenario for Republicans. Montana, and heck, we'll say that, I don't know, they somehow find a strong general candidate and they kick Ted Cruz to the curb. That would probably be a worst case scenario for Republicans. And even then, it's still not that bad. That's how good this map is for the GOP. That even a worst case scenario for them is not that bad. So, for right now, I would personally leave it like this. This is where I feel next year's Senate elections are going to go. As of right now, obviously, there's more than a year. So, there's a long time to go. So, anyway, I want y'all to take it easy. Have a nice day. And, bye-bye.